There is someone you cannot stop thinking about, and no matter how hard you try to move on, your mind keeps returning to them like a hand touching the same old scar. That is not random. That is not nothing. And what you are about to hear may change the way you see the silence between you. Because the distance is not always a sign that love is gone. Sometimes it is the sign that love became too real, too deep, too heavy for one heart to carry without fear. So before you decide they never cared, before you tell yourself the story is over, stay with me until the end, because the truth is stranger, softer, and more painful than most people expect. And once you see it clearly, you may never look at quiet separation or mixed signals in the same way again. When one person lives in your thoughts almost every day, when their memory keeps showing up in quiet moments, late nights, small triggers and sudden feelings, there is usually something deeper underneath it. Not fantasy, not simple habit, something unfinished, something emotionally alive. And if there is distance between you now, whether that distance is emotional, physical, or complete silence, then what you are feeling may not be the absence of connection at all. It may be the pressure of a connection that never fully found its shape. The first truth is this. The person in your mind may truly care about you more than they ever showed. Not always in loud ways, not with perfect words, clear plans, or constant messages, but in the quiet way some people carry love when they do not know how to hold it in the open. They remember more than you think. They carry small details, your tone, your eyes, the way you made them feel safe for a moment, the ease, the warmth, the rare feeling of being seen. That kind of memory does not disappear quickly. And if you have ever wondered why someone can care and still stay away, keep listening, because this is where the deeper reason begins. Love does not always move people closer right away. Sometimes it does the opposite. Sometimes real feeling causes hesitation before it causes courage. When a person starts to care deeply, they do not only feel attraction or comfort, they also feel risk. They feel exposure. They feel the sharp awareness that they could lose something important. And for many people, that is where fear enters. The deeper the feeling, the more clearly they see their own weak places. They begin to notice old pain they never healed, fears they never named, and doubts they kept hidden even from themselves. You do not just touch their heart. You touch their insecurity, their old wounds, their fear of failure, their fear of not being enough, their fear of hurting someone they never wanted to hurt. And if they are not emotionally ready, the feeling can become overwhelming. This is the part most people do not understand. Distance is not always coldness. Silence is not always lack of love. Sometimes it is what happens when care becomes too intense for someone who has never learned how to stay calm inside real closeness. If this already feels familiar, stay with me, because the next part explains why pulling away can become their way of protecting what they feel instead of proving it was never there. Some people step back not because their heart is empty, but because it is too full. They want to come closer, but their mind fills with questions before their feet can move. What if I disappoint them? What if I cannot give them what they deserve? What if I start something I cannot sustain? What if my feelings become stronger than I can manage? These questions can become louder than desire. And when that happens, distance starts to feel safer than intimacy. Not better, just safer. Pulling away becomes a form of self-protection. It becomes a shield against rejection, failure, vulnerability, and the possibility of being seen too clearly. They may miss you and still avoid you. They may replay your conversations and still refuse to send a message. They may care deeply and still choose silence because silence feels easier to control than emotion. That does not make the situation less painful for you. It only makes it more complicated. Because from the outside, silence looks like indifference. It looks like choice. It looks like a person who does not care enough to act. But inside them, there may be a very different story playing on repeat. A storm hidden behind stillness. A battle between longing and fear. And if you have ever felt confused by mixed energy, by warmth followed by distance, by closeness followed by retreat, this may be the hidden pattern you were sensing all along. There is another hard truth here. Sometimes strong love feels like a responsibility that scares people. The more they care, the more they feel the weight of what that care could demand from them. Real affection asks for honesty, presence, stability, consistency, emotional openness. And if they do not trust themselves in those areas, they may pull back before the relationship asks them to become more than they think they can be. They may look at you and feel that you deserve someone steadier, clearer, more healed, more complete. Instead of rising to meet that feeling, they retreat from it. They tell themselves they need more time. They tell themselves they should not drag you into their confusion. They tell themselves that distance is kinder than giving you half of a heart. This is why the space between two people can sometimes be built out of care, even when that care is deeply flawed in the way it is expressed. And yes, that hurts. Because love that stays hidden still creates pain. Love that does not show up still leaves questions. But hidden care is not the same as no care. Remember that, because many people spend years blaming themselves for another person's distance, when the truth is that the distance began in fear, not rejection. Stay with me, because there is an even deeper layer here, and it explains why your mind keeps returning to them no matter how many times you try to move on. Your thoughts do not return to them again and again for no reason. Emotional bonds do not end simply because contact ended. When something important remains unfinished, your mind keeps circling back, trying to make sense of what your heart still feels. That is why you replay moments. That is why random memories hit hard. That is why one song, one place, one quiet evening can bring everything back. Part of you is not just remembering. Part of you is still searching for closure, clarity, or completion. The connection paused, but your inner world did not. And when a bond never had a clear ending, it can stay emotionally active for a long time. You start reviewing what happened, what was said, what was left unsaid. What could have happened if timing had been different, if fear had been smaller, if one more honest conversation had taken place? That does not mean you are weak. It does not mean you are trapped. It means the experience mattered. It means your deeper self recognized something meaningful there, even if outside reality could not hold it. Unfinished emotional energy is powerful. It does not vanish because you tell it to. It waits. It echoes. It asks to be understood. And if you have been hard on yourself for still thinking about them, hear this clearly. Recurring thoughts do not prove failure. They often prove depth. They prove that something real touched you, changed you, and left a mark that simple distance could not erase. Now, here is the part that often shocks people. The person who stepped away may also be thinking about you far more than you imagine. Not always every hour, not in a dramatic movie style, but in small, private moments that carry weight. Late at night, during routine tasks, in little pauses where memory sneaks in. They think about your words, your energy, the version of themselves that appeared when they were around you. They may wonder what would have happened if they had been braver, if they had spoken sooner, if they had trusted themselves more, if they had not let fear lead. But even then, hesitation can still win. They may freeze instead of reach. They may feel longing and still do nothing. This is one of the most painful truths about human emotion. People can care deeply and still remain inactive. Not because their feelings are fake, but because their inner conflict is stronger than their ability to move. And every time they delay, the silence grows heavier. Every time they postpone honesty, the gap becomes harder to cross. Yet the feeling itself may stay alive underneath all of it. So if you ever thought, if they really cared, they would just show it, remember that emotional reality is often messier than logic. People do not always act at the level of their feelings. Many act at the level of their healing. That line matters. It explains so much. And if you are still here, the next part may help you stop blaming yourself for what was never yours to fix. You did not create the fear inside them, and you are not responsible for healing what they were already carrying before you arrived. This is important, because when someone pulls away, the person left behind often starts shrinking themselves to make the story feel manageable. Maybe I was too much. Maybe I asked for too much. Maybe if I were softer, cooler, easier, less emotional, less honest, less deep, things would be different. But many times, the real issue is not that you were too much. It is that your presence activated something they were not ready to face. You brought depth, you brought truth, you brought emotional closeness. And instead of feeling safe enough to receive it, they felt exposed by it. That is not your failure. That is their unhealed place speaking through distance. Yes, they may care. Yes, they may love in the only way they know. But love without readiness still creates damage. Affection without stability still creates confusion. Care without courage still leaves another heart waiting in the dark. So do not romanticize pain so much that you forget your own worth. Understanding their fear can bring compassion, but it should not require you to abandon your own needs. Real love is not only about what someone feels in private. It is also about what they can hold, express, and build in real life. That difference matters more than most people admit. And if this truth hits hard, stay with me. Because there is still one more layer that can change how you carry this story. Sometimes the distance itself has a purpose. Not because pain is beautiful, not because confusion is noble, but because space can reveal what constant closeness hides. Distance shows patterns. It exposes emotional maturity. It reveals who is willing to grow and who only knows how to retreat. It teaches you whether a connection can become something steady or whether it only survives in imagined form. In the quiet, you start seeing more clearly. You begin to notice the difference between potential and reality, between strong chemistry and true emotional availability, between being deeply felt and being truly chosen. This lesson is not easy, but it is valuable. Because love is not only intensity, it is not only longing, it is not only the electric pull that keeps two people thinking about each other. Love also needs courage, timing, self-awareness, and the ability to stay. Without those things, even real feelings can remain suspended in silence. That is why patience matters here, but so does discernment. You can understand their fear without turning it into your future. You can respect the connection without letting it control your peace. You can honor what was real without living forever inside what never fully happened. If this is speaking directly to your situation, do not click away yet, because the next part may be the sentence your heart has needed to hear for a very long time. Someone can feel strong affection for you and still not be ready to stand beside you properly. Both things can be true at once. That is why this kind of situation feels so confusing. The love may be real, but the readiness may not be. The bond may be powerful, but the timing may still be wrong. The care may exist, but the person may still be too wounded, too unsure, too afraid, or too emotionally scattered to build something safe. And when you finally understand that, a shift begins. You stop reading their silence as proof that you lacked value. You stop turning their inner conflict into a judgment about your worth. You stop measuring yourself against their fear. Instead, you begin to see the fuller picture. You were not rejected because you were unlovable. You were caught inside someone else's battle between desire and defense. Their distance may have said more about their healing than about your place in their heart. But here is the line you must not forget. Even if they care, you still deserve care that can reach you. Even if they think of you, you still deserve someone who can speak. Even if they love quietly, you still deserve love that does not need silence to survive. Let that sink in. Because many people stay emotionally attached not to what was, but to what it felt like it almost became. And almost can hold a person for years if they do not wake up to the difference between emotional intensity and emotional capacity. There may come a day when they return with more clarity, more calm, and more courage than they had before. That is possible. Sometimes people do grow. Sometimes fear loses power. Sometimes old wounds finally loosen their grip, and someone who once stepped back becomes able to step forward. But that possibility should never become the reason you put your life on hold. Hope is not meant to become a cage. If they return, let it be because they are ready to meet you fully, not because you stayed available for every unfinished version of them. Let actions speak louder than memory. Let consistency speak louder than emotion. Let presence speak louder than longing. Until then, your task is not to decode every silence forever. Your task is to protect your own heart while understanding what happened with open eyes. Learn from the bond. Feel what it taught you. See how it revealed your own depth, your own tenderness, your own ability to love deeply without losing truth. Because this experience, painful as it may be, is also shaping your future. It is teaching you what emotional safety feels like by showing you what emotional uncertainty costs. It is sharpening your sense of what you need, what you can carry, and what you should no longer excuse. And that wisdom matters. It will follow you into every connection that comes next. Maybe that is the real reason this person stayed in your mind for so long. Not only because they mattered, but because the connection opened a lesson your heart had to finish learning. It showed you how silence can still hold emotion. It showed you how love can exist and still fail to become a relationship. It showed you how another person's fear can create distance that feels personal even when it is not truly about your value. And it showed you something about yourself too. It showed you the scale of your heart, the depth of your attachment, the way you seek meaning, not just attention, the way you want real closeness, not surface contact. That is not weakness. That is not too much. That is a gift when placed in the right hands. So if your thoughts still drift back to them, do not panic. Do not shame yourself. Just notice what the bond is still teaching you. Notice where you are still searching for answers that only time, truth, and lived reality can give. Notice whether you are loving a real person, a paused possibility, or a story built from almost. That question alone can change everything. And if this message is reaching you at the exact moment you needed it, hold on, because the final truth may be the one that brings the most peace. The distance between two people does not always mean love ended. Sometimes it means fear interrupted what love wanted to do. Sometimes it means healing was missing. Sometimes it means one heart was ready while the other was still learning how not to run from its own depth. But no matter how true their hidden feelings may be, your life cannot be built on hidden feelings alone. You deserve love that arrives in the light. Love that does not make you guess every day. Love that does not need endless space just to stay alive. Love that can stand close without collapsing under its own emotional weight. If they truly care, then one day that care must become clarity. It must become action. It must become presence. And if it does not, then let the silence teach you what it came to teach, and let yourself move towards something steadier. Because your heart was not made to survive on fragments. It was made to be met, fully, openly, consistently. So stop blaming yourself for another person's unhealed fears. Stop shrinking your needs to make someone else feel safer. Let the connection mean what it meant. Let the lesson become wisdom. Let the memory be real without letting it rule you. And remember this whenever the silence starts to speak louder than truth. Someone can care deeply and still be unable to stay, but that never lowers your worth. And it should never make you forget the kind of love you truly deserve.